What we believe is that games are an art. We can teach through them, we can express through them, we can have students actually express themselves, tell their stories, tell their culture, tell their voice. It's important to us.
Very excited to see what happens in the future for you guys, and actually to have another play of the game later today, I think.
Sometimes when something doesn't exist, you need to invent it. And you see that here with the School for Interactive Arts.
Hello, my name is Darcy, and welcome to the School of Interactive Arts' first ever virtual arcade. SIA is an after-school and weekend program that teaches high school students game design. And as a program, we have students go through 3 different levels of the program. So first, they begin with core, where they focus on learning basic principles of programming within the Unity engine and become familiar with creating their own projects within it. They follow a unit-based curriculum. Then they move into advanced, where they learn more advanced concepts of game design and begin to create their own games that they then submit to competitions like Games for Change and the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. And they also are able to take the Advanced Placement Computer Science Principles test. Lastly, the highest tier of SIA is Studio. And in Studio, students then take all of the knowledge that they learned within Core and Advanced and are teamed up to create their own game. Within Studio, students are mirroring the workflow of a game development team in real life, as they're split into departments, have formal meetings, and are not given much instruction from any of the teaching artists. Now, the SI Arcade is a yearly event that we hold where you'll be able to see the work of our students from every single tier of the program and have a grand old time with us doing so. Now I'll pass it off to Sean, who will talk a little bit about Core.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Heron. I am the primary instructor for the core section of the School of Interactive Arts. Basically, what my job is primarily dealing with sort of the intake and introduction of new students to sort of the 2 main parts of our overall curriculum, which deals with teaching computer science through game design, as well as kind of more traditional digital and non-digital game design.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the advanced session. I'm Zed, the teacher of advanced cohort. As we have said before, SIA come up with this 3 cohorts structure. So when the students pass all the benchmarks in the core, they will then go into the advanced session. Let's take a look at our SIA webpage. So this is our SIA webpage, and all of the projects are made by SIA students. Many of them are actually coming from the competition. Here in advanced, not only your students learn about new units, but they also attend game design competitions as a practice or for their portfolio pieces, which will help them further in whether they want to develop in industry or whether they want to have further education on related field. So game design competition has always been an important part of advanced curriculum. And during the past years, SIA students attend many national-wide awards and won them. So one of the biggest competition that we SIA attend is called Game for Change. And here we invite our awards winner, assistant teaching artist, and SIA alumni, Geneva, to talk about their game, Solar Sprout. Hi, Geneva.
Hello.
Perfect, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about your project called Solar Sprout, but before that, I want you to give a quick introduction of yourself, to let everybody knows more about you.
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Geneva Hayward. I'm a current sophomore at NYU's Game Center, and I'm also an assistant teaching artist at SIA. So the prompt for this that year that I chose was connected cities.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the idea behind it is I wanted the main character to be able to connect with other people in different ways through knowledge, through emotions, and through electricity.
I see.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at this game. Solar Sprout. Cool. So I do have like a few questions for this game because like finally we can sit together and talk about the project you've made. So Geneva, how do you come up with this design idea?
So basically, when it came to this game, I started off with trying to make a character design that was a robot because I knew that I wanted this to be like a futuristic type of thing.
Right.
But I was trying to figure out how can this like robot that's like sentient like connect people together. And so that's when I was playing around with different prototypes where it was like, oh, maybe the robot is flying around and like delivering things or connecting people, and eventually finished up with having, like I said, the free, like you're connecting people by giving them electricity so they can go online and stuff, and you're listening to people's problems, or you're like delivering a book from one person to another.
I see. So you're actually mentioning about the prototype. Is there any like prototype that you feel like strongly about? Like how does the prototype evolves into this final product-ish things? How was the idea from the prototype, evolves and becomes what we have seen right now? We're seeing right now.
Yeah. So with the prototype, I remember like instead of like having like these 3 different things you're doing, it was just basically like you have different energy sources and you're just like kind of shooting them out to different people based on like how they're colored. Like, like I kind of tried to color code problems in a way. But I noticed like this isn't as fun. It's like it doesn't feel like you can't shoot like happy thoughts into people's brains.
I wish I can.
So I tried to like fix the mechanics so it would fit more narratively and with the theme. So yeah.
Cool. Oh, this is Antonio's game for this year. Game for Change. What's the prompt? Do you remember the prompt?
It's the one with. Wow, I'm really blanking today.
I think it's
it's like it has to do with like pets.
Bruh, someone's game for change is called A Human's Best Friend.
That's true. It's
So
human's best friend. True. Cool. So yes. Yeah, that's right. It's just human's best friend. Yes, and I think this game, it's like what amazed me first is that it actually has a full tutorial telling you what to do. Like some of the students' work, it doesn't really have like the tutorials, and even though many of them are like kind of like the very kind of like not ordinary, but like controls that people are familiar with, but still I need to went through this process of like figure out what to press. Especially for this game, you have to control 2 characters, right? And that is actually hard. So I'm super glad that he made this tutorial, which helps me a lot. This is we have a lot of things to talk about this game actually.
Yeah. So from last year.
Yes, and this is the national winner for last year, right? I personally love this game a lot. Like I kind of feel like. Well, we'll see this actual gameplay later real quick. This is the opening scene and narrative, but this game, I feel it actually combined this game design, like the game mechanics with, the narrative, the prompt super well.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it just, like, I don't want to spoil it yet, the video is still going, but it's just, like, just look at that penguin. It's so cute. Like
that's true.
Just moving around as a penguin feels really great in this game.
That's true.
And then, like, they do really well with trying to like teach the player about, these are some problems that you're gonna have to face in this game as a penguin.
That's true. And okay. Well, the thing is that like later, and also here is the best part of this game. You can dive and slide. This is my favorite part of this game. It feels so good, and you jump, right? And this is so good. That feeling is super good. And because of time, we don't really have time to show all of this game. But later in the second run of this game, you can see that because of global warming, because of the iceberg are melting down. The level changes, right?
Yeah.
Previously, as you can see, like those floors, they are all connected, like an entire floor there. But later, in the second run of this game, it becomes parts of it, I think. Like,
yeah, it's just like they're gone, they disappeared.
exactly.
It's a lot harder to move.
Exactly, and there are holes on this, like, glacier and iceberg, so it makes like the sliding a more, strategic action. You have to like choose where to, actually slide. So I do remember there was like a hole there, and if you drop down, you die, which is actually what penguins are experiencing, right? So
yeah,
this is why I feel like the game design of this game meets the prompt so well.
yeah.
Hello, my name is Nuka. I'm the instructor of SI Studio. So Studio is a class where students make their own games together, and then they will pitch their own original idea. They will decide with one idea to make for each studio. And together, they will develop that game over the course of a whole year. So they work in groups and departments, and they will have leaders such as creative director and project manager. So Darcy here is currently the ATA of this class. She's also the first director and project manager of the first studio class. Now I'm going to hand over to her and let her introduce more about us.
Hello, like Noka said, I'm Darcy. I was the creative director and project manager of last year's studio. We were a team of 8 students, but now this year we have 2 studios where there are 24 students in total. And during the studio process, as a team, we had to make 3 presentations. So the first one was in December, where we decided to solidify what we're going to actually be making for the rest of the year. Then the second, talking about our process and how much we progressed in a couple of months. And the third is the end product, where we showcase our. So currently, this year's studio are in the second presentation phase, where they're talking about progress on their game now 4 months into production. And now I introduce you to hear our first studio. It's going to be presenting Syntax Error and their creative director, Genesis.
Hi, my name is Genesis Espinal. I am Syntax Error's creative director, and today we will be giving our mid-production presentation for our first ever game, Fool's Errand. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, here is a quick rundown of the contents in this presentation. We have the introduction featuring myself and my project manager, Larissa. Following us will be game design / narrative. They'll be explaining the mechanics, an in-depth discussion of the rules, and player experience. Afterwards will be art. They'll be talking about how they translated concept, decided color scheme, and getting the player in the mood. Then we have music. They'll be talking how they created the sound design and expanding on the theme of Fool's Errand. And last but not least, programming. They'll be speaking about how they compiled all the assets and created the build that we have currently. Okay, let's talk Fool's Errand. You're in your suburban home in Florida. Don't ask where, it's not very important. Just know that our intrepid young shadow figure has not paid off the mortgage, and no, they don't have hurricane insurance. And listen, you may be home, there may be no one there, and you might want to take a nap, but your house is a mess. You've got chores to do. So get them done fast, and maybe you'll be able to take that nap. And those chores, they're puzzles now. There's always the one obvious way to get things done, but that's boring. Reupholster your couch with curtains, glue your doors shut, and wash the dishes? No, you're burning them. Problem fixed forever. And I could keep speaking to you about this, but I think it'd be better if you could see a video of it yourself. Cool. So, how did we get to where we are now? the teenage years. We're figuring it out, we have a vague idea of what we want to do, and we're taking steps to move towards that idea. Originally, Fool's Errand was a reverse escape the room game where you would try to lock yourself in. You prevent others from coming in with various different and exceedingly eccentric ways. But if you see below, where we are now, a young adult, there's definitely more development than before, but there's still room for improvement. We took the idea of completing things in unconventional ways and grounded it in Florida, and changed from preventing others from coming into the house to completing chores around it. We're keeping the weirdness by having different ways to complete your chores and a high replayability, kind of like Binding of Isaac, where you can do things one way, but you can go back and find the other ways to complete a puzzle. This is where we are now, and here is Larissa to explain the steps we took to get here.
Hey guys, so my name is Larissa Flores, and my job is I am the project manager for Syntax Error. So essentially what my job is I make sure that everything's going on schedule and on track, and a big part of that was making the production plan. And what the production plan does is it essentially delegates roles, and it's realistic and flexible about deadlines and just makes sure that everything comes together. So I'll be showing you a picture of what the production plan looks like. So on the top, we have what we have already completed from day one to now, and on the bottom is our future plans. Now, given that we've gone through a lot this year, aside from just the situation that we are in right now, what with not being able to be in person, there have also been absences and roles that have had to be switched and all of that. So that has obviously made our plan shift in a lot of different ways. But fortunately, we have been flexible and we have been able to accommodate. And aside from just accommodating, we have gone above and beyond since we're doing a pretty good job. We're actually further on schedule than we had originally intended as per the plan. So although this is a very small image and it's not very legible, just know that we've been doing a great job and just keep at it, guys. Just nice job. And, keep being flexible and it's coming along nicely. So now I'll pass it on to game design and narrative to explain their end of the presentation.
Hey guys, so I'm Gabby. I'm the lead of the game design narrative department, and Courtney and I are here today to show you what we've been working on for the past almost half a year. Unfortunately, Ben couldn't be here with us today. So we pulled a lot of references for the main mechanics of the game, which is puzzles and exploration. We pulled puzzles from Angels of Death and exploration from The Binding of Isaac. So if you don't know about Angels of Death, it's a psychological horror game where essentially in order to move on to the next floor to escape the place, you usually have to solve a puzzle or a series of puzzles. And in order to solve those puzzles, you need to walk around the room, find items that may or may not, or more like items that seem like they might not be useful, but they're always essential to solving a problem later on. For example, in one of the puzzles, you need to escape a poison gas room, and you end up using a TV remote in a room that doesn't have a TV. And it made sense. Courtney?
For the example of exploration, we have The Binding of Isaac. For those who aren't familiar with the game, it's a dungeon crawler game with randomly generated rooms to explore where you can find special powers or other items to help you along in the game. While we don't have another GIF or image of the player finding power-ups, this shows the different parts of exploration where there are many doors to walk through and to check out the various rooms. In this case, this one's just a room with a bunch of other enemies to attack. So we'll go into how this translates into our next game in the next part. So how is this all translated into Fool's Errand? Well, we took the puzzle and exploration aspect and set up several rooms with items that can be found to solve problems you face in the actual game. More specifically, for the puzzle part, we have a list of chores that the player may complete in no specific order. The player may use the items they collect to finish the chore, and for each chore there are various combinations where the player may need multiple items to complete the task set. Some of these combinations are pretty strange to say the least. On the exploration side, we have a map of the house where the player may walk around and explore the different rooms such as the kitchen or the living room. In the rooms, you may find items that could prove useful to the chores, and one might think that items are useless, but don't assume anything and think outside the box. So as you can see here, We are in a living room, and one of the chores is to fix the door. The character is acquiring the baseball bat, and you would need to think a little outside the box. So the player actually broke down this wooden object, and it gave them wooden planks. Well, if you think about it logically, for this one, um, you can use the wooden planks to board up the door, but you also need another part. So this would represent the needing of multiple items to solve a problem. But in other ways, you can solve this the chore by seeing that little glue bottle on the floor and actually gluing the door shut. So you can think in many abstract ways and figure out problems. So this has like replayability, and you can see what all the solutions we have come up with. In the next slide, we'll be talking about the floor plan and how that relates. So these are the more polished floor plans, and there have been minor changes over time, but that's to be expected. We were aiming for multiple rooms as it would make a little more sense for, let's say, Bleach to be in the bathroom or the kitchen and not just lying around in the living room or like a bedroom. We'll be moving on to the title screen, which Gabby will talk about.
So the title screen, we made several mock-ups that we haven't decided on what design we'll be specifically going for yet. So Ben made the title screen mock-up on the left, where we have a nice picture of the house. It's a sunny day. You have the press start button in the corner, and originally it's supposed to put a gear in the other corner. And I made a house where you put the press start button as the welcome mat and the title logo, which we have not officially completed yet, on the roof, and a gear lying next to the house for the settings. Because why have a boring menu screen that just says, would you like to start the game, settings, all that crap? Nah, we're not about that. So I know this isn't very pretty, at least the drawing I made anyways, and it's certainly not finalized. But we'll be moving on to prettier things later on. And speaking of that, we'll move this on to the art department.
My name is Nancy, and my partner Maddie and I are Fool's Errand's art department. Here we will be discussing the concept, color, and mood of the game.
Hello, as Nancy mentioned, I'm Maddie, and I work for the art department for Syntax Error. And first things first, what we deem would be the most important is figure out the mood for the game, what the player would feel while playing. And since we went with the overall theme of abstraction and just general strangeness, we wanted to add on to that with colors and the way the backgrounds looked. So we followed the color theory, which means that different colors inspire different feelings, and we use that to make the player feel strange or a little bit uncomfortable, to say the least. Each color is assigned to kind of like not really like a positive emotion, I would say. It's meant to look dual, strange, and abstract. So, for example, the living room. We give it a brown color, like a wood brown color, which would make it look dusty and old, and kind of like give it a cabin look. The kitchen, we give it like a blue cyan color, which would make it, it would look clean, but also dull and gloomy. The bathroom, we wanted like a swamp green, like mossy green, to make it look unkept and like kind of dirty and neglected. The office gets like the monotonous and bland feeling with like color of beige and like dark coffee color. And then for anything out of the four main rooms, we would just draw in black and white with some touch of green to that. Yep, that's about it for the color palette. Here you can see it in action, how it actually transformed into the design of the rooms. These two were done by me, and the one on the left, it's only a part of the room. It's only the portion of the front door from the living room, and it just uses it presents like the general look of the room, right? It's not a finished room because there's still a lot more detail that would go into it. However, you can get like the feeling just by looking at the image. You can just get the feeling of like old, though kind of looks like an old person's house almost. The one on the right is the kitchen, uh, quite obviously. It looks gloomy and it has just this monochromatic look of blue. Uh, the only thing like really keeping it from being that gloomy is the painting of the chimpanzee above the sink. Again, this is not a finished room design, and the chimpanzee might go at some point. There's still a lot more detail, but that's the general concept.
Partway through production, Maddie and I have switched roles, resulting in the designs of the backgrounds and assets being changed. This slide shows the difference from the before and after of the kitchen. The next shows the designs of the items being changed. The screen shows how the backgrounds and assets are being used in the game. Although the assets being used in the current game aren't the newer ones, it still provides an insight of what they're used for.
Hello. Hello, my name is Jasmine, and I'm part of the music department with my partner, Steven. We initially wanted the game to have a casual but jazzy atmosphere with some sort of comedic feel. So one kind of music I took inspiration from was elevator music, which sounds like this. It had the casual feel we're looking for, but we also needed some jazz, so I looked at this example of slow jazz. Based off of these kinds of music, I created several versions of background music for the game. In the beginning, I played around with the piano, bass, and percussion to create version 1 of the track. I found that it sounded a bit heavy and it seemed somewhat repetitive. Making this kind of music was a little bit outside my comfort zone since I don't usually create jazz music. I usually create calm tracks instead of jazzy tracks. So I whipped up a second version of the song, which sounds like this. It sounded good at the time, but it didn't really feel like it fit the game. There needed to be a mischievous feel, and the second version sounded mostly just like a chair piano to me. Jazz has many different instruments, so I created a third version of the background music to see what I can do, which sounds like this. Now this one definitely sounds fun, and it feels like it fits the game more, because it has somewhat a mischievous feel. There still needs to be some improvement since I need to tweak the percussion because it sounds a little cluttered. On to you, Steven.
Thank you, Jasmine. Sorry about that. And when I first start
My partner Steven worked on sound effects. These are not all the sound effects, but due to time reasons, these are the ones that are being shown. So when he started off making the sound effects, he created two universal sound effects. The pickup sound, which you can see here.
Can you hear me? Sorry about that. This is what happens when you have issues with
Play O2. and the drop sound effect. These were created on the application called Logic Pro X. You may continue, Stephen.
Okay, so after I created the two universal sound effects, I created another two sound effects for one for when you when you succeed using the when you complete a chore. I had one if you succeeded and one if you didn't. And I used Logic Pro X for that as well. Then after that, I started working on sound effects for the items because they also need sound effects. For that, I used the microphone and items around the office to record it. The sounds that I recorded were put on an application called Audacity. The two examples of that is 05 and 09. And play the 05 and 09. Okay, so that's what I did with the sound effects. So now let's go to the programming department.
Hello, I'm David, and I'm here with Trevor.
Hello.
Sadly, go on, Trevor.
All right. So, okay, let's switch the slide. All right. So this is going to show what we did so far. So when we first started making this, we wanted to focus on making the basics of the game. So we decided to have one person work on puzzle system, and one person work on the inventory system, and one person work on the miscellaneous stuff. While this allowed us to work very efficiently, it did come with the issue of having to combine our systems later, which did eat up a lot of our time. However, once we managed to get those systems working, we started adding more puzzles, as well as adjusting things based on feedback. Okay. After that, we started implementing more things, such as the basic title scene and the dialogue system.
Okay, so here you can see the previous build. It doesn't have anything like background or stuff. On this build, we were mostly trying out the items and if the items worked on the door, let's say, and if the bat could actually break the shelf. On the next slide, you will be able to see the build that we have now. On the current build, as you saw on the game design slides, you could see that we could be able to pick up the objects, use it, and do stuff with them. On the next slide, we will see the hardships that we had. Okay, the hardships. The hardship that we had was linking the data cache with the dialog system. The data cache was basically all the items names and descriptions. And it was really hard, at least for me, to link them together because I didn't actually understand the code as fully. So I just had to ask for for my teammates to help me understand the code, and then after that after me being able to understand the code, I could actually link them together properly. Another hardship was GitHub, which it normally break for me, so I had to go with the other team. Credit to Sarah from Soup for helping everyone with the GitHub problems. Another hardship was combining the inventory and puzzle system together because the code were totally different. We have to rewrite the code almost rewrite them for both so that it better. And also some of Studio and Game for Change, which Game for Change is and we had some trouble balancing the time between both. And that's it for programming department. Now, thank you.
Um, Thank you everybody for watching this presentation. Thank you everyone for being part of this presentation. And we'll get to Soup Studio's presentation after the break.
My name's Sarah. I'm the project manager of Soup Studio. So just to give a quick recap of what Leah was saying, our game is called House of Cards. It's about a little card mage who opens a pack of cards, releases a huge castle trapping his village, and then he basically needs to go through the castle and free them. The game's very much a hack and slash, following the examples of the games we presented before. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I do as the project manager. So people don't really know a lot of what a project manager does. So my main task is mostly to put it generally, I help out Leah with leadership responsibilities, and I also make sure that our project is going according to plan. So just to list off a little bit of what I do, I measure how much progress we're making. I adjust for unforeseen incidents, such as the remote work, and I make revisions. I also oversee meetings and complications. Oh, meetings and communications, sorry, between departments, and I also manage conflicts. So anytime they have a meeting about a conflict, I'm in the room mediating as well as taking notes. And along with the note taking, I also organize those notes and manage all of our game's documentation. So our Google Drive, our Notion, and our source tree, which I'm going to talk about later. These are some amazing tools. And I also have a lot of technical knowledge to keep the project going if there's a huge bug, because I have a lot of knowledge about the game design and software that we're using. And I feel as though my most important role is to keep a positive, optimistic, fun attitude. Like, if I wasn't excited about this game, no one on my team would be excited. So, just to show you guys, this is our first production plan. This is basically a huge spreadsheet of everything that we're going to do. So, you might be asking yourself, did we stick to that schedule? And the answer is no. We did not stick to the schedule. And there's a reason. We on this team, we love games. We love making games. And the thought of making this game in a big team is incredibly exciting. So we pretty much shot to the stars without taking into account how much difficulty we would actually have. So instead, we looked at our original plan and decided as a team to cut content and then re-add it. Because spoiler alert, making a game is really hard. Based on a lot of these previous video game disasters that you might have heard of, these are all really well-known games made by companies with millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of people working on it, but they rushed it. And these games turned out really bad and got terrible reception. And so we knew as a small studio with a much less powerful workforce, if we rushed our game, it would have turned out just like these. So here's what we did instead. For the month of January, we pretty much finalized all of our ideas and we began working on the foundations. We created the project, we set up a lot of the software that we needed, we sketched, and we finalized documents. Leading into February, we finalized art assets, started testing out the mechanics that we decided in our game, and this was also the month where we evaluated our workload and cut down on what we were going to have in the game. And most recently, in March, this is where we were able to move forward with the cuts that we made. We have most of the first level assets completed and implemented. We have some sprites, animations, and we're still expanding our level and adding in more things based on player feedback. So now I kind of want to talk about the tools that we use, because without them, we would not be able to make this game. I personally want to talk and really endorse Notion. It is amazing, it's wonderful, it's very, very convenient for tracking things that need to get done. On Notion, I log meeting notes, I log documents, I put tasks. The notes that I'm looking at right now are in Notion. It's really just an amazing tool for making sure that we all stay on track with our tasks. This is just an example of the stuff you can do in Notion, putting tasks for each individual department. It's extremely useful. I highly recommend you use it. Another thing we're using right now is called Discord. We did use Slack for a little bit, but we ended up switching to Discord because most of us were used to it. We mostly use Discord for communication and for check-ins on progress. Usually, if we were in our physical office, we would be working in separate spaces, but instead we have separate channels on Discord. Another thing we use is called Git and SourceTree. This is a big source of pain for all of us. It's very complicated. It's a really complicated service for making sure that each programmer and designer has access to the latest version of our project. One of our programmers, Mario, will be explaining it better because it's very difficult to get it working correctly at our level of knowledge. But when it does work, it's incredibly helpful. Leah already mentioned IPS, and now I want to go over to playtesting. It's basically giving our game to kids and making them play it. It's basically another way to make sure that our newest features and assets work, and we can fix anything that doesn't work, and we also get a feel on how players are perceiving the game, so we can make changes earlier in development rather than later. So now I kind of want to talk about what are we going to do next, especially with this situation. So our plans for April are going to be continue working on implementing our assets, tweaking bugs. We're also going to discuss adding in a second level that we had previously cut, and we're going to make this final decision soon. In May, we're going to continue testing both our first and second level. We're going to tweak anything that doesn't work. We're going to finalize art, and we're also going to tweak our dialogue system. For June, this is the last month of work. We're going to do some final polishes, final tweaks, final playtests, and then we're done. But most importantly, we're going to stay positive. Our attitude for the next few months until June is going to be making the most out of our current situation. We are not giving up. And now I would like to bring in the narrative and music department, led by the wonderful Hassani.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody. My name is Hassani Cates, and I work with my partner Melvin Dargan for the music and narrative of House of Cards. Melvin couldn't be here to present with us today, so I'll be filling in for him. Let's get started. So what do? Number one, we write a compelling story to interest the player and keep it coming back after they completed the game. Number two, we create music to fit the game and really get the player into the mood of the plot and the setting. Number three, we create good dialogue to immerse the player into our game and get them understanding the characters. And number four, we implement sound effects to add a second layer of immersion into the game. So the narrative process can be broken down in 3 steps: exchange ideas, write, and revise and review. First, exchange ideas. What we do is we get together with our partners and we just lay down some ideas, try to understand what everyone wants from the narrative, from the plot, the setting, the characters, etc. And we make sure that we have all these ideas laid out so that we can write the narrative. Number two, write. We sit down, we focus, and we write the narrative. We use the application Google Docs to not only increase efficiency between the writing of the two of us, but we also did it so that we can help share our document with our teammates in an easier manner. And number three, we revise and review. After we finish our draft, we go to our teammates and we make sure that everyone has had a chance to read it and really process what we wrote. And we accept all feedback and comments so that we can make a better version the next time we write. And this process is repeated until the narrative is complete. So here are just a couple examples of the dialogue that we wrote for the main character, just to say randomly in a fight. The main character is very witty and sarcastic, so we wanted the dialogue to reflect that. So number one of the quotes is, "Everyone is so easy to hit. It's quite a shame. I've seen boulders with more mobility than you ruffians." And number 12 says, "This castle is going to come crashing down if you don't start trying harder. Pretend this is blackjack and hit me." So how did we come up with this dialogue? Well, number one, we looked up everything we could about cards. We figured out all their terminology, all the different games that could be played with cards and things like that, just to make sure we understand the material. Number two, we thought about how we can make them into puns or jokes or funny quips that the main character would say. And number three, we got in the zone and we just started writing and make sure that everything we said was funny or witty to somebody and made sense with the character. Now, onto music. To make the audio for this game, we decided to use the software Logic Pro X. On the screen right now, you can see a recording of a track that you will hear shortly. And it was essentially inspired by the genre electro swing. Essentially a modern version of classical music, but it had more energy, which we thought would better fit with the game. So some inspirations of ours were Dramaphone in a game called Caravan Palace. It was a huge inspiration that we actually found on ourselves through our own research. And there's another song called Dummy in Undertale that was actually given to us by our peers. So now I'd like you to hear the main track for the game, House of Cards. So, what are our next steps for the game? Well, the good news is that our script is 100% completely finalized and ready to go. So, me and Melvin will be doubling down on music so that we have enough tracks and enough sound effects to fully finish the game, and we will focus on implementing them. And now, without further ado, I'd like to move on and throw it over to the game design department.
Thank you, Hassani. All right. Hello, my name is Tafari Kozak, and I am with the game design department, along with my friend Nick, who sadly cannot be here today. So what do we do? Well, as the game design department, it is our goal to pretty much decide what features and other things would go into the game, such as the user interface, mechanics, among other things. So we decide on things like mechanics, UI. We also create like a basic layout of the area that the player will use, and we think of ideas of different like enemies. So what is our process? The four main parts of our processes are brainstorming ideas, the fundamental core principles, identifying necessary skills, and putting ideas into action. When it comes to brainstorming, this is one of the most important parts as it pretty much allows us to think of what is going to be put into the game. Fundamental core principles. Here's when we think about our new idea and how it fits into like the general scope of our game and seeing like what's possible within each team. Identifying necessary skills. So after we've implemented certain features, we also have to take a step back and see who would be like the best fit for a job, such as like putting in music, so like talking to the other departments. And then finally, we put the ideas into action. So we essentially have a talk with the other departments, and then we go from there. Hassani, if you'd like to take over for a second.
Yes. So as Leah mentioned earlier, I was shortly involved with the game design department, and one of the steps that we did earlier in the game design process was brainstorming. So as you can see, the picture to the farthermost left, this is just a picture of our process for pre-game, where we decided what we would want from the game. So it's separated into three categories: yes, maybe, and stretch goals. Under yes are all the things that we absolutely need to have in the game. Maybe are the things that we'd like to have in the game, but we're not sure if it would fit or if we have enough time for it, but we definitely want to check it out if we have the chance. And stretch goals are things that we absolutely cannot do in a reasonable amount of time or with our resources, but we would like to try to do if we complete the game in a good amount of time. The middle picture is what we wanted the game to be like beforehand, where there would be a tutorial room, 3 levels, each with a final boss, and then one final boss that has 2 forms. Unfortunately, time didn't allot for that, so we ended up having to cut some things. And now there is a tutorial level along with the first level that is shown on the right side.
Taking back over, we go on to our next steps. So what are our next steps in this process? Well, not the last few things, but the next few things we have to do are design the levels, add the UI to the game, and work with programming to implement certain features. Designing the levels is one of the more fun and important parts of the job, as not only do we get to design the basic layout of the game, but we also need to ensure it's playable and will be fun for the people actually playing. Adding the UI. This is also very important as it's the main way the game will relay information to the player. This can be things like health, ammunition for the cards, or even like your magic power. And now working with programming. This is also equally as important as this will be our way to like implement certain features into the game. And with that, speaking of programming, I would like to introduce the engineering department.
Hello, my name is Kimani,
My name is Mario.
and we are the programming team. Well, what do we do? Using C# on Visual Studio, our job as the programming team is to make the game work, like making the character move, attack, interact with other objects, making enemies move, and many more. We are what makes the game function. We also work with other departments, like game design, to make a level editor so they have an easier time creating different levels of the game. We also come together to talk about topics like how much damage the player does, how much HP the player has, how much damage the enemy do, and how they move, and etc. And we go back and make those changes. We also work with the art teams to implement their animations into the game.
So some of our processes, well, first of all, you might be wondering what this actually is. This is an animation tree. We take a bunch of animations that the wonderful art team made, and we put them all together so that they can actually function. The way they function is so the player moves, and while it moves, it has an output. So like as a number. So as long as that output is higher than 0.01, the animation for movement will play. And yeah, so and on this slide, instead of movement, it's actually an attack. And in this attack, the player is throwing a card, but it cannot move while it is throwing this card due to the fact that in the code, movement is frozen, sort of, while he is attacking. Here is our bullet script, and this is how it functions. In the top box, it looks for two player scripts, and it gives it access. On the second box, there's a timer that counts down as soon as it is shown on screen to make sure the bullet isn't out for too long, because that could break the game. And in the third box, it reduces the enemy health and destroys the bullet on collision with enemy for the same reason, so it does not break the game. And here is okay. So as Sarah said earlier, I will be explaining how the cloud works. So everyone, including game design, we all share the same sort of game file in the cloud, and we can all add onto it, and we can all take out what has been changed without anybody else making an error or somehow breaking the game. And if somehow the game breaks on someone's side, we can just take it out and it's fixed.
Some of our next steps include fixing all possible bugs that we have in our scripts, things that may end up breaking the game or if not convenient for players. Another thing would be adding the sound effects and music that our sound design department have made and putting it into the game. And our final thing will be finishing the UI that we'll get from the art team. And speaking of the art team, here they are.
Hello, we're the art department. So first and foremost, I want to tell you what we do. So what we do when it comes to the art department is basically we make the art. A lot of what we do is like interdisciplinary with a lot of the other groups. We talk to them about we talk with game design of like, is this character supposed to be scary? If they're scary, then we're like, okay, great. Let's figure out a way to make them designed that way. If we also work with background design, with sprites, with animations, we take the idea of the game and visually communicate it for everyone else. And where we're at with this is basically halfway through with almost everything. It's actually really cool. We can start with our colors, actually. So a lot of what we're doing was making sure that what we were doing was accessible to people with hard vision in a sense. We made sure that all of these colors, when put together or alone, were accessible for people with like visual disabilities, like color blindness, value blindness, and so it makes it easier for everyone to play. Now for our cinematic afterwards, we wanted to just basically start off the game a lot like how you see with things like Earthbound and Delta or Light Drifter, is that they have something with the narrative to introduce a bunch of the story. So you go through it where like you're just walking through a market one day and you see this person's deck of cards. You go to reach for it, you pick it up, and you start a whole fight with everyone in that marketplace. You open it, and then bam, that's where the game starts. And so we're going to introduce you to our game world. Here are some sprites that we create for the overworld on the tutorial level and the basement of the first level. The most important part that we wanted to show here was this feeling of that more like when when you wake up during a winter day and like you just look at this like snow pile that's like really cool on the ground and just light coming from everywhere. We wanted to make sure that we were able to show that within our first. And so to do this, we juxtaposed actually just two colors of like a blue and a yellow, which are actually complementary. And so because of that, we wanted to emphasize it within our character as well. Moving on to our player, we have a few examples of their attacks, of their melee and ranged. There's some of their walking sprites, an example UI. But the most important thing here is that we wanted to create this player based on this idea of projection. We wanted to make something both unique within the game and inclusive within its depiction. So we just wanted to make sure that everyone could look at this character and project on it. And so because of that, we didn't design them with any sort of gender in mind. And rather we just focused on design aspects. And we mostly did this by breaking away from our initial color scheme with their skin color. We wanted to just like really harshly communicate that this is like an isekai thing. Like your character is not part of the environment that they were shoved into, but at the same time, they're special from everything else that's going around them. Moving on to our first card that you meet, rule card. He's actually very cute because we wanted to make him really friendly and familiar. He's your guide throughout the tutorial stage, and I mean like he's a rule card. And so we looked at shape language, which is this thing in design education where like circles are soft and friendly, squares are stable and silent, triangles are assertive and sharp. And if you take a close look at him and his sprite, we emphasized this roundness and circular shape to him to make him more believably friendly. And on the complete opposite spectrum, you have the jack. Now, this jack is mostly made up of what you can see, triangles. It's a lot sharper compared to the. And for good reason. He's your first boss. He's supposed to be like a melee attacker whose quick strikes like pose perilous danger to you. And like we thought it really helped communicate the sense of physical danger to make our players' visual experience match with their interpreted experience if we use triangles and a darker color scheme. But that doesn't mean that we also didn't use this in our little cronies. Moving on to our two little children, the 2 and the 3 card. We wanted to make them match their respective level boss, the Jack. So we kept them melee as well. We know that after talking with the game design department, the 2 card was sluggish but did a lot of damage, and the 3 card, after a lot of iteration, was going to be a fast, like slashy character that runs past you. And so we wanted to make sure that our animations made sure with. So you can see with the 2 card, it's a very heavy swing, and with the 3 card, it's just a very quick little run. And we wanted to just emphasize that within all of these, especially within shape language, to make our players' visual experience. And I'm going to pass this off to Serena, who's going to talk about what we're going to do next.
Hi all. If you didn't hear already, I'm Serena. I'm part of the art department with Soup Studio, and I'm here to talk about what we're gonna do going forward. So, as you saw, we had a lot of different things that we have already covered in the game, including like sprites, designs, and things of that nature. So going forward, we want to add a lot of uniqueness to it, starting with character portraits. This is an example of a dialogue between 2 characters, and we wanted to have a similar um, thing where you can see who's speaking with actual expressions and how they actually look like, rather than a small pixel illustration of it. With that, we also wanted to focus on something like the UI. In our current demo, we don't actually have anything that shows your health bar, how many cards you have, as well as like the enemy's health or things of that nature. So we wanted to add something that visually shows how much health you have, how much hits you can take, and with that, we work with the game department in it. And then with that, we also wanted to work with sprites, which includes more animations. This one being a rolling animation. Being a card mage and fighting in this hack and slash world, you want to be able to show a lot of movement. With that, we wanted to add more actions for him to do. We already have him throwing the card, them throwing the card. We already have them fighting, running up and down. And with that, we wanted to add things like dodging, rolling, blocking, and things of that nature. So that's in our further scope. And as we said in the beginning with Sarah saying how games were rushed, unfortunately we had to cut a lot of things from our scope, which includes basically the rest of the bosses. From left to right, we have the queen, the king, the ace first form, and then the ace second form. Sorry. Um, so basically, because we don't have enough time to put all of these bosses into the final game, we had to cut them from the game and focus on just the first level to make sure that the first level is extremely polished as well as very fun to play.
Sorry, I was muted. I just want to say a big thank you to the art team and to everyone who helped make this game possible. And thank you to everyone who's here watching and listening to our team talk about our game. It's been rough, but we are here for the long haul. We're giving House of Cards our very best.
Hi again, everybody. It's Serena from Soup Studios. I'm here to talk about my pride and joy at the moment, my Kickstarter game. In this presentation, I'm basically just going to lay out this game that I've set up and what I'm going to do for it. So the game is called Apollo Theater. Let's start with, who am I? As I said before, my name's Serena. I am Latina in my senior year of high school. I'm 18 years old, and I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. That's just a picture of me that I drew in my quote unquote trademarked yellow jacket. So what is this game about? Apollo Theater is a video game that I'm planning on making. It's a mystery game focused around Nicholas, a junior who just moved into the fictional town of Estonia. An occult fanatic, he runs a blog where he posts his daily sightings and findings. With high hopes, he went into the town planning on continuing his hobby, but he didn't expect it to surpass his expectations tenfold. He moved into the town with his father, as he got a new job, and he came in wanting to just continue his hobby of tracking the supernatural and posting his ghost sightings as well as just freaky things that he saw every now and then. But the town of Estonia is a very odd place. So after getting a after school job at the local movie theater, Apollo Theater, one day, as he went to throw out the garbage near the end of the night, he saw a raccoon and he thought, "Hey, that's pretty cute. Like I like raccoons." And then when the raccoon opened his mouth, he had the teeth of a shark, which really freaked him out. So of course he went to his blog and talked about how weird it was. But then more things started to happen. As if trying to find his way in a new environment isn't enough, after finding out that a couple of people in the town has gone missing, including his gym teacher and the worker at the hardware store, he decides that he's going to take care of this problem himself. With his coworker Clover, he decides to get to the bottom of the supernatural mystery. So I'm going to talk about the characters now, starting with the main character, Nicholas Flores, or his as we call him, Nick. He's 17 years old, a junior in high school. He just moved to Estonia with his father, as I said before. He's Latino, and he keeps in touch with his older sister, who is currently in college, a state over. He really likes the occult. He, as I said, runs a blog. He's also obsessed with a little cat mascot that is shown on the right hand bottom right there, Oscar. And yeah, he's very passionate, a little clumsy at times, but he always has the best of heart in mind. And then with that, his coworker and closest friend at the moment, um, Clover Murphy. She is an Irish American who goes to the same school as him. She's also 17 years old, and she decided to start working at the movie theater to support her very large and still growing book collection. So now that we covered the plot and the characters, I want to go into what does the game actually going to look like. So I've decided to make it sort of like a walking simulator. For people who don't know, a walking simulator is kind of what it sounds like. It's just you basically walking around whatever the scenario is. In this case, a town. Um, as you can see on the game screen, we have the beginnings of the town, which includes like a market, and Nick in the very middle, in front of the market's doors. On the top right side of the screen, you can see the time, which is 1:30 p.m. As a mechanic will be implemented so that whenever you go to school or perform any activities, you can actually like decide how much time you have left in the day. As you know, he's still a high school student, so there's school nights in this universe. Um, and you can go around the town and the neighborhood and talk to various people. This is an example of what a conversation would look like with an NPC. The chat bubble the chat bubble's color, how it would look like, and how the font looks. As well with that, when you go into any sort of area or place, it turns into a point and click. This is so that you can get more intimate with your investigation. It's a little hard on a widescreen, like walking back and forth to find the little objects. So my goal with this was to make sure that you really feel like you're investigating a place when you go into it. We can see Nick on the left-hand side of the screen, and the plant and the water bottle that is highlighted in the middle of the screen, that would be an example of you clicking on something to investigate it further, as well as Nick's comments on it. Again, on the top right of the screen, we can see the current time, and this would suggest that this is maybe after his shift or even before his shift. I'm very excited about building this game further, and I hope that this little taste of the plot and what it will come to be gets you excited as I am. And thank you very, very much for listening to me, and my pride and joy.
Thank you everyone for joining our SIA arcade. You were all wonderful. The chat is amazing and hilarious. So thank you again, and please check out our website down below.